So I personally don't have much experience with Sindhi language, but I have met Sindhi people and I have seen their beautiful culture. I've heard some of their songs. And as for the Sindhis I've met in life, I've mostly met them in Karachi. And something I found very fascinating was the widespread use of the Sindhi language in their everyday lives. And I learned that all of my relatives in Karachi were taught Sindhi in schools. And that came as a shock because I'm from Punjab, and here we were never taught Punjabi in schools. It was only English and Urdu. So all of that led me to the question, well, how well is the Sindhi language actually preserved in Pakistan? Now, if you're Sindhi and watching this video, what do you think the answer to this question is before we actually delve into the research? Tell me right now down below in the comments what you think. And while you're here, make sure to like, share, subscribe. And hi, my name is Misha and welcome to Tarikhi Tales. Now, according to the 2017 census, 14.6% of the entire population of Pakistan identify themselves as native speakers of the Sindhi language. The Sindhi language is spoken primarily in the province of Sindh in Pakistan, which is home to more than 47 million people. But that's not where all the Sindhi speakers live. They're actually scattered throughout some other countries as well. We find a lot of them in India, which moved there during the 1947 migration. And then there's a whole other diaspora around the world. But in this video, we will only be talking about Pakistan. I might make a video about the diasporas and the Sindhis in India at a later date. If you want to see that video, let me know. Comment down below, and if enough people want to see it, I might as well just make it. Because I did find some research on that as well. So focusing on Pakistan. Now, nearly half the population in Sindh lives in rural areas, where Sindhi is the primary language. In the urban areas of Sindh, like Karachi and Hyderabad and other such cities, Sindhi competes for the status quo with English and Urdu. Now, to answer the question that I posed earlier, how well is language preserved? How well is the Sindhi language preserved? I came across a couple of studies that were done in Pakistan, and the one we'll be talking about today was done recently in 2017. And they were trying to figure out the shift or the maintenance of the Sindhi language in Pakistan. Now, this study defined maintenance as maintenance relates to the continuing use of and proficiency in a language concerning both groups and individuals in the face of competition from another language. And shift was described as shift is to do with a reduction in the use of a language among a language group. Loss is to do with a reduction in language proficiency and is particular to an individual. So they're basically differentiating between what they mean by shift and loss. If it's a shift, that means a number of people in the group are moving away from the language, and if it is loss, then they're talking about one specific individual. These technical terms and understanding exactly what they mean are kind of important when you go through these research studies. So we'll also be talking about their methodology, exactly how the research was carried out. And they did a very good job of kind of trying to get like a snapshot of the entirety of Sindh. And there are a couple of things they did to make sure that different regions and different people from different groups of life are included within the study. The methodology included elaborate questionnaires, which were then followed by in-depth interviews. The people who were selected for the interviews were selected randomly, but they did have some controls in place. For example, from the 26 districts in Sindh, they picked 16 districts to kind of represent the entirety of Sindh. And they picked those 16 districts keeping some things in mind. Jamshoro and Dadu districts represent the mountain areas. Thatta and Badin are mostly coastal belt districts. Matiari and Tando Muhammad Khan are plain land areas and are close to Hyderabad city. Tharparkar and Umarkot are desert areas. Khairpur and Sanghar are bordering with India. Ghotki and Kashmir have borders with Punjab province. Jacobabad and Kambar Shahadat Kot are bordering with Balochistan province. Karachi and Hyderabad are the multicultural, multi-ethnic and multilingual districts. Now, from within each of these districts, the researchers picked out 20 people. Now, within the 20 people selected from each district, they made sure to have representation from both males and females. And also, they had a blend of people from different professional areas so that they have a better snapshot of the Sindh province. And you can see the kind of different professionals they picked from this table. Now, before we delve into the study, let's look at the snapshot of the census of Pakistan over the years. And if you look at the numbers in the census, in 1961, 12.59% of people identified as Sindhi speakers. In 1981, it was 12.7%. And then in 1998, it was 14.1%. In 2017, again, 14.57%. So we do see a gradual increase in the number of native Sindhi speakers, which coincides with the increase of the population of Pakistan. We saw with the Punjabi video that in Punjab, the opposite is kind of happening, right? So this data also kind of ties in with the preservation of Sindhi. Now, this study shows that the Sindhi people historically have faced many challenges with regards to how Sindhi has been treated. And it is due to those challenges that the speakers actually take a lot of pride in their language and their heritage. And hence the community together strives to keep this all intact, making this one of the ethno-linguist groups in Pakistan which is actually doing very well in preserving their language. Now, before we delve into the study itself, we also have to have a look at the age of the respondents in the study. And here's a graph that they provide showing you the different age groups that were included within this research. We can see that there's a lot of diversity across all age groups. So we'll go over the different questions that the study kind of posed to the interviewees, and we'll look at the graphs for each answer to kind of see how well Sindhi language was doing in different domains in the minds of all of these people. The first question they asked was about the perception that these people had about the dominant language. And in this case, they're only talking about the dominant language in the province of Sindh. The answer that they got. 58.3% of the people thought that Urdu was actually the dominant language in the province of Sindh, while 31.3% people actually thought that Sindhi is the more dominant language. It shows that a sizable proportion of the people do understand that the ground reality is that Urdu is definitely a more dominant language than Sindhi. But there is still a large group of people that would like to believe that Sindhi is still one of the more dominant languages. Along with age, another thing we need to know is the socioeconomic factors that contribute to language shift, because a lot of linguists actually have researched that whether you shift to another language from your regional language also depends on your socioeconomic situation. That means your wages. The study also asked its respondents about their income class, and here is a snapshot of their incomes. We see that the majority of the people here belong to the lower middle class and only a few to the middle class. Number 2, language use with relatives. Now, in this category, they had actually 2 questions. One, how many people use their mother tongue, which is the Sindhi language, with elders in the family? And turns out more than 82% of the respondents actually used Sindhi as a language of communication with their elders. And another question was respondents' language use with youngsters. This is usually the case which kind of forms like a shift in language. Like in the case of Punjabi, when people spoke with youngsters, they would change languages into English or Urdu. But in the case of Sindhi, almost 78% of the people converse with their youngsters in the Sindhi language, which is a really good marker. Now, because they talked about income classes initially, they also looked at the parameter Sindhi language in low and high income Sindhi families. Now here's a graph showing Sindhi language in low income Sindhi families, and we see that 85.3% of the people choose to maintain their language and speak Sindhi. But now have a look at this graph. Sindhi language in high-income Sindhi families. We see that the number drops to 76.4%, and we see an increase in the shift to English, Urdu, and a mixture of all 3 languages. So as is expected with higher incomes, people are shifting away to other languages. Number 4, business language. We see that 89.34% of the people choose to speak Sindhi as a language of choice for business. Now, this was kind of uniform across all age groups within this study. And the study notes that people would speak Sindhi regardless of whether the owner of the shop is Sindhi or not. And because of this, a lot of the shopkeepers, even if they're not from a Sindhi background, because they're operating within this region, they made an extra effort to learn the language because that's what their customers want. They want to talk in Sindhi. So the owners, regardless of wherever they're from, they learned the Sindhi language. Number 5, language use in education. This graph, it shows the language used in education in the Sindh province. And it shows that at the primary level, many of the respondents use only Sindhi language. When they move on to the secondary level, students begin using other languages too. This is actually a very natural progression. You see this consciousness in the minds of Sindhis that other languages like English and Urdu are important towards their growth in the world, right? So as they're progressing in their education level, they are starting to speak in a mixture of all the 3 languages that they're taught. And eventually this is actually very beneficial. Being multilingual has a lot of benefits and is very sought after actually. Then comes language use in media. Both electronic and print media were considered for this question. So when the study was done, it was found that at that time, Pakistani television provides almost 50 channels. The majority of those channels are in Urdu. The responses show that in Sindh, 29% of the families watch Sindhi language channels only. 23% watch a mixture. 23% families watched a mixture of different channels, and only 10% watched English. Of those who watched only Sindhi language channels, 58% people watched KTN channel, which is apparently a very popular Sindhi channel. As for radio, there are 16 radio frequencies airing radio programs, but turns out that most of the respondents don't know about the majority of these channels. And the only ones they listen to are FM 92 and FM 101. Now, when it comes to print media, majority of the respondents read a newspaper called the Daily Khwahish, almost 82% of the people. 7.5% of the people read Daily Ibrat. Other than this, the researchers also asked about the different monthly magazines and also the different Sindhi journals that are published, and turns out that a lot of people did not know about them. The next parameter was language used by Sindhi doctors, lawyers, educationists, engineers, and other skilled professionals. And here is the graph that emerged from this question. We can see that Sindhi stands out as the most widely employed choice by professionals of this crucial community, because it's often in these professional arenas that people completely ditch their regional languages and move towards the more commonly known languages or the more dominant languages. But in the case of Sindhi, these educated elites actually kind of make sure to incorporate Sindhi in their daily practices and their daily lives, which is a huge marker of its maintenance in this category. So overall, we see that Sindhi language is actually maintained quite nicely within Pakistan, and there are a number of reasons as to why it's maintained so well. Sindhi is actually one of the few regional languages of Pakistan that enjoys institutional support from its own province. It's taught in schools, it's used in everyday life, and it's the richest in terms of literature and books as compared to all the other regional languages over time. Some of the markers that we looked at themselves are the answer to this question as to why it's so well maintained. Look at all the different fields, all the professional fields, and people themselves are making an effort to keep the language alive. And even as we looked at the shopkeepers, other people from other ethnicities are having to learn the language of Sindhi because Sindhi speakers won't have it any other way. And I feel like that's remarkable because they really are preserving and maintaining their language and helping it flourish, keeping the entire culture alive. And maybe we can learn some things from them and appreciate the beauty of their culture, heritage, and language, and also enhance our own shared identity, right? But if you look at Sindhis which are outside of Pakistan, like in India and in the diasporas that I mentioned, things are actually quite different. And let me know down below if you want to know more about that, and I'll see if I can make a video about that, okay? So I'll see you guys next time. Bye.